There is something incredibly powerful about the way a woman looks at a man and sees more than just his appearance, status, or wealth. It's not a conscious checklist. It's not a logical evaluation. It's an unconscious resonance, a subtle inner voice that whispers, "There's something real here, something familiar, something magnetic." Carl Jung devoted his life to understanding this deeper reality, the invisible forces that drive human behavior. And when it comes to attraction, what truly makes a woman fall for a man is found not in the obvious, but in the hidden. Jung taught that each of us is not only made up of our conscious mind, but is also deeply influenced by what he called the collective unconscious, the part of our psyche that holds inherited patterns, images, and instincts passed down through generations. These are the archetypes, and they are far more powerful than any technique, pickup line, or external display. When a woman looks at a man, she's not searching for his resume. She's sensing his archetypal presence. She's drawn to the warrior, the one who acts decisively and stands strong. She's captivated by the magician, the one who sees deeper than appearances and holds a mystery in his eyes. She melts in the presence of the lover, the one who is emotionally alive, present, and open. And she trusts the king, the one who embodies inner authority, purpose, and grounded strength. She doesn't always know this on a conscious level, but she feels it. Women have a naturally refined emotional radar. They perceive energy. They read beyond words. If your energy is hollow, if you're putting on a mask, she will feel it. She may not be able to explain why she pulls away, but she will, because the unconscious knows, and what it seeks is truth. Carl Jung famously said that the shadow, the repressed, hidden parts of ourselves, holds much of our vitality. It's not evil. It's simply the parts of you you've been taught to hide, your rawness, your instincts, your fire. But ironically, this is what women sense. Not your perfection, not your polish, but your authentic energy. Society constantly bombards men with the message, be successful, be desirable, be impressive. But how many men have you seen who have everything, the looks, the money, the reputation, and yet struggle to connect deeply with women? And how often have you seen a quiet, grounded man, seemingly ordinary, who draws others in without even trying? That's the difference between image and essence. Women don't fall for pictures, they fall for presence. And if you're disconnected from your inner world, if you're chasing validation rather than owning who you are, she won't feel safe with you. She might smile, she might talk, but she won't surrender to you, because surrender requires trust, and trust begins with truth. Jung believed that each human being carries a unique energetic presence, something deeper than personality, beyond logic. When a man enters a room carrying stillness, she senses it. When he doesn't try to impress, but simply is, she feels that as strength. True attraction isn't about words, it's about state. Your inner world is always communicating. If your energy is filled with anxiety, fear of rejection, or desperation for approval, she will feel that. Not with her mind, with her body, with her intuition. But if you're at peace with yourself, if you've made contact with your truth, if you're no longer afraid to be real, you become luminous, not in a flashy, dramatic way, but in a way that radiates quiet confidence. She'll feel that light, not with her eyes, but with her soul. Here's the paradox. Men often try to show only their light, their success, kindness, charm, attractiveness. But what creates the deepest pull is actually your shadow, the raw, unconscious, emotional part of you that is alive. A woman doesn't always know why she's drawn to a certain man. But it's never about perfection. It's about realness, aliveness, inner fire. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." You become magnetic not when you hide your flaws, but when you own them. You become desirable when you stop performing and start revealing. You become unforgettable when your presence speaks truth without needing validation. That's what women truly respond to. Not to the act, but to the authentic soul behind the act. Most men try to become more attractive by adding something to themselves. More confidence, more charm, more achievements. But Carl Jung teaches the opposite. True magnetism comes not from addition, but from integration. It's not about what you show others. It's about what you've faced within yourself. Shadow work is the process of turning toward everything within you that you've been taught to reject. Your fears, your anger, your lust, your sadness, your wounds. Not to act them out, not to suppress them, but to make them conscious. And when you do, something astonishing happens. You become whole. And wholeness is irresistible. A woman can sense this wholeness before you say a single word. Jung warned that until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. Most men live under the illusion that if they're good enough, kind enough, giving enough, they'll be loved. But what they don't realize is that this goodness often comes from fear. Fear of being rejected if they say what they truly feel. Fear of being abandoned if they assert themselves. Fear of losing love if they stop pleasing everyone. So they suppress their anger, their boundaries, their erotic energy. They become nice, but not real. They become polite, but not powerful. And while some women may appreciate the surface, they'll never fully trust it. Because they can feel that something is missing. They can feel that the man in front of them is fragmented, divided within himself. And when a man is divided, he can't lead, he can't hold space, he can't be the ground a woman can relax into. That's why shadow work isn't just a spiritual process. It's a magnetic one. A woman doesn't just fall in love with how you treat her. She falls in love with how safe she feels around you. Not just physically safe, but emotionally safe, psychically safe, energetically safe. And this safety only arises when you are whole, when you've faced your own darkness and no longer run from it, when you've held your own pain without needing her to fix it, when you've acknowledged your own capacity for destruction and made peace with it. Then, and only then, can she trust you with her shadow. Then she can surrender, then she can open, because she knows you're not just a mask. You are a man. And here's the paradox. When you stop trying to be the man she wants and start becoming the man who is real, she wants you more. Jung spoke of the alchemical process, the transformation of base material into gold. And this wasn't just literal. It was symbolic of the psychological and spiritual path. In this view, your deepest pain is not a curse, it's raw material. Your insecurities, your shame, your heartbreak, they're not things to escape. They're fuel. And when brought into the light, they create presence. True presence is not built on perfection. It's built on depth. A man with presence is a man who is here, fully, with all of himself, no longer hiding, no longer trying, no longer split. And when you're fully present, women don't just look at you. They feel you. They feel your groundedness, your clarity, your inner stillness, and they respond because they finally feel seen. If you've ever wondered why someone loses interest even though you're doing everything right, the answer might be this: you're performing instead of being. You're managing impressions instead of embodying truth. And people, especially women, can sense the difference. Shadow work is the path back to truth. It's not glamorous, it's not quick, but it's powerful. It's the journey of reclaiming every lost part of you, of looking at the boy who wasn't allowed to cry and telling him he's safe now, of facing the rage you've buried and transforming it into purpose, of welcoming the wild, chaotic energy you were told to fear and learning to own it. This is the journey of the integrated man, and the more you walk this path, the more your presence speaks, without needing words, because what she responds to is not your strategy. It's your state of being. For too long, society has sold men a lie, that the alpha male is the one who dominates, who stays cold, who never shows weakness. But Carl Jung saw something deeper. He taught that real strength lies not in control, but in consciousness, not in hardness, but in depth. And in today's world, that depth is rare, which is why it's magnetic. A man who understands his emotions and doesn't run from them becomes a mirror to a woman's own heart. And in a world full of shallow gestures and fragile egos, this kind of man becomes unforgettable. Men have been taught to hide their feelings, that tears are weak, vulnerability is feminine, and showing emotion is unattractive. But here's the truth Jung uncovered. Whatever you repress controls you. A man who refuses to feel is not in control. He's possessed. Possessed by anger he doesn't understand. Possessed by sadness he calls boredom. Possessed by loneliness he masks with sex or ambition. And worst of all, women can feel it. You may say all the right things. You may look composed. But if your inner world is full of chaos, you refuse to acknowledge she knows. She may not know why she's uncomfortable. She may not explain it logically. But her body, her intuition, her ancient feminine intelligence will scream, something is off, and she'll pull away, not because of who you are, but because of what you're hiding. Let's be clear. Emotional depth is not about becoming needy. It's not about oversharing or making someone else responsible for your healing. It's about ownership. It's about knowing what you feel, where it comes from, and standing in it with dignity. A man who can say, yes, I've been hurt. Yes, I've felt fear. Yes, I've faced loss, and I'm still here. That man is dangerous. Why? Because he can no longer be manipulated. Because his strength comes from truth, not image. Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own souls. But when you face yours, you break the spell, you become real. And realness is rare, realness is valuable, realness is luxury. There's a sacred dynamic between the masculine and the feminine. The feminine flows, feels, and changes, while the masculine holds. But you can't hold her emotions if you're terrified of your own. If you shut down when she cries, if you get defensive when she's upset, if you try to fix her pain because you can't handle it, then you're not leading, you're escaping. Jung knew that true masculinity isn't about dominance, it's about containment. Not in the sense of control, but in the sense of being solid, present, safe, awake, a man who has explored his inner terrain, who has sat with his own despair, who has made peace with not having all the answers, becomes the kind of man a woman can fall apart with, and still feel held. And this, right here, is the real alpha. Not the loudest man in the room, not the most boastful, but the man whose silence feels like shelter. There is a calm that comes from feeling fully, not reacting, not suppressing, feeling. A quiet dignity in the man who can cry without shame, rage without losing control, and love without fear of being broken. When you reach this state, you become unpredictable, not in a chaotic way, but in an alive way. You stop following scripts. You stop performing. You become spontaneous, real, raw, and that presence electrifies the space around you. Most men try to attract by doing more, but the Jungian man attracts by being more conscious, more rooted, more emotionally awake. And that is the kind of man who is never seen as just an option. He is an experience, a force, a presence that lingers in her mind long after he's gone. Carl Jung taught that you don't become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. That means your value doesn't come from how much others validate you, but from how deeply you see yourself. In the game of attraction, self-respect is not a luxury, it is the foundation. And when you embody it, people don't just notice you, they adjust themselves around you. In a world where most people chase approval, the man who doesn't need it becomes unforgettable. Let's start here. If you don't see yourself as valuable, no one else will. Not because you're not worthy, but because people mirror your energy. Jung would say, what you do not bring to consciousness appears in your life as fate. And this applies to how you let others treat you. When you settle for crumbs, it's not just a behavior, it's a belief. When you chase someone who keeps you waiting, keeps you confused, or keeps you guessing, you're silently telling your unconscious, their love is worth more than my peace. But what if your peace was sacred? What if your time, your energy, your attention were gifts, not entitlements? When you truly believe this, you stop asking to be chosen and start choosing yourself. And that energy is magnetic. People don't respect nice. They respect clear. They respect consistently. They respect the man who knows what he stands for and what he won't stand with. If you say yes to everything, you become invisible. If you let people cross lines just to keep them close, you don't create connection. You create resentment. Carl Jung emphasized that individuation, becoming whole, means confronting the parts of ourselves that betray our own values. So ask yourself, where are you betraying yourself to earn love? Do you silence your truth just to avoid conflict? Do you tolerate disrespect because you're afraid of being alone? Do you overgive just to be seen? These patterns don't make you weak. They make you human. But if you never become conscious of them, they become your identity. And nothing erodes your power faster than living in contradiction with your own truth. Here's a secret Jung knew. We don't remember people for their perfection. We remember them for their presence, their standards, their energy. If someone can mistreat you and you stay, they lose respect. If they pull away and you chase, they lose interest. But if you leave, not with drama, not with revenge, but with calm, confident distance, they feel it. They feel your absence more than they ever appreciated your presence. Why? Because self-respect is a vibration. It's the silence that says, I know who I am, and I won't trade it for your confusion. It's the gaze that doesn't flinch when someone plays games. It's the walk away that doesn't come back just because someone finally noticed. This kind of energy doesn't beg to be chosen. It invites others to rise. And if they can't, you don't fall. You don't need to control others. You don't need to punish them for not seeing your worth. You don't need to prove anything. All you need to do is hold your frequency. When you respect your time, your words carry weight. When you honor your heart, your love becomes rare. When you don't give access to everyone, your presence becomes precious. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." And who you are is not desperate, not replaceable, not ordinary. You are a man of depth, a man of vision, a man of value. And the world responds to that, not with handouts, but with reverence. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But in today's world, most people give too much too soon. They pour their entire identity into someone else's cup, hoping for connection, but often ending in disillusionment. Why? Because what truly captivates the human psyche isn't availability, it's mystery, it's scarcity, it's controlled presence. This is not about playing games. It's about understanding your value. It's about showing up as someone who knows that his time, his attention, his energy are not commodities. They're currency. There's a difference between being closed off and being intentional. The man who shares everything about himself instantly may seem honest, but often he subconsciously seeks approval. Jung would call this a projection, the desire to be understood before being secure in who you are. Mystery doesn't mean you're hiding. It means you're grounded enough to let others earn access to your depth. When you speak, do you pause before you share? When you connect, do you leave space for curiosity? When you show up, do you radiate peace instead of pouring out need? Remember, the most powerful presence doesn't shout. It draws others in with its stillness. People chase what they don't fully understand. They get addicted to what gives them glimpses, not floods, because the unknown invites imagination, and imagination is more powerful than exposure. Your presence is your brand, and in the words of Jung, the stronger the feeling, the more limited the expression. That's why controlled presence has weight, because it respects emotional energy as sacred. You don't need to be everywhere. You don't need to constantly check in, prove your interest, or explain your worth. Controlled presence means you choose when, where, and how you show up, and you let others feel the difference when you're not there. Think about the difference between someone who texts all day and someone who sends one intentional message that feels like a key that unlocks your mind. Think about the man who floods you with compliments versus the man who says one thing, and it lingers in your soul for days. That's the power of restraint, of intention, of calm certainty. Mystery doesn't mean being vague. It means being layered. A Jungian truth, people project what they cannot understand. So when you hold back just enough to let them discover you slowly, they invest more, because they're no longer interacting with just a person. They're interacting with an archetype. You're no longer just a guy. You become a symbol, a question they want to answer, a story they want to keep reading. And here's the paradox. The less you try to impress, the more impressive you become. The less you reveal, the more they want to explore. The less you over-explain, the more they remember how they felt around you. Not just what you said. When someone tries to provoke a reaction, and you give none, that's control. When someone tests you, and you stay centered, that's strength. When someone pulls back, and you don't chase, because you trust yourself, that's power. Carl Jung warned that people project their own unconscious onto others. But when you're calm in your presence, they can't project chaos onto you. You reflect back to them their own confusion, And that makes you unforgettable. Because in a noisy world, your silence becomes a signal. It says, I don't need attention, I choose alignment. It says, I don't fear distance, I trust energy. It says, I don't chase, because what's mine is drawn to me by nature. And that kind of presence is rare, it's regal, it's luxury. Carl Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. This idea lies at the heart of your final transformation, the moment when you stop seeking approval and start reflecting truth. When you finally see yourself as a luxury, not an option, something powerful happens. You stop performing, you stop convincing, you stop chasing, and instead, you become a mirror. Not just any mirror, but a spiritual one. A reflection that reveals to others what they haven't yet accepted about themselves. When you've done the deep inner work, when you've integrated your shadow and stood face to face with your fears, you become emotionally immune to manipulation. You no longer react, you observe. You no longer absorb others' projections. You reflect them back. To those who are insecure, your confidence feels arrogant. To those who are controlling, your freedom feels threatening. To those who are used to chaos, your calm feels intimidating. Why? Because you are no longer playing their psychological game. You're not performing, you're existing. You're not following their script. You're living your truth. And this truth disrupts, it reveals, it exposes. Just by being in your presence, people are confronted with their own contradictions, their own wounds, their own unhealed patterns. And in this confrontation, you stop being just a person. You become a revelation. One of the most misunderstood aspects of personal evolution is the idea of detachment. People assume that if you care less, you're heartless. But Jung would argue the opposite is true. Detachment is not the absence of love. It's the presence of clarity. You love without needing. You give without expecting. You show up, but you don't cling. This kind of energy feels rare because it is. Most people are emotionally fused. They confuse their worth with their acceptance, their value with validation. But when you've transcended that stage, your presence becomes a sanctuary. People feel safe around you, not because you fix them, but because you don't need them to be anything other than what they are. And ironically, that is what makes you unforgettable. By now, you no longer chase being chosen. You've become the one who chooses. You've shifted from proving to observing, from pleasing to protecting your peace, from needing to knowing. And here's the paradox. When you no longer try to be the perfect person for someone else, they finally get to meet the real you. The you that doesn't bend for approval, doesn't shrink for comfort, and doesn't fake humility to fit in. You are now the standard. You are now the filter. You are now the test they must pass, and many won't. Some will ghost you because they can't manipulate you. Some will insult you because they can't control you. Some will leave because your presence reminds them of everything they've avoided healing. Let them go, because you're not here to be loved by the unready. You're here to shine so brightly that only those who've done their inner work will feel safe in your light. The transformation is complete. You started this journey trying to make others see your worth. Now, you realize you were the gift all along. You are no longer a man who needs to be seen. You are a man who sees himself. No longer a soul searching for acceptance, but one who radiates self-respect. No longer an option on someone else's list, but a luxury few can afford. Carl Jung once said, The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. And now, you've done just that. You're not a fantasy. You're not a performance. You're a reality so rare. It feels like a dream to those who meet you. So walk with grace. Speak with power. Move with intention. Because you are no longer just a man trying to be liked. You are a force of clarity in a world full of confusion. A storm of self-respect in a sea of neediness. A living example of what it means to be whole.